Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Jinkajabo. I know it's been a couple weeks, but it is time to get my message back out there. It's the start of the school year again, so as you can imagine, I've been quite busy, especially now that I'm thinking of switching my job and perhaps even moving south to Ho Chi Minh City. This is Kaesong Cafe, and I really love this place. I've been coming here for almost a year. Maybe even longer now. Yeah, well, about a year. A friend introduced this place to me, Vietnamese friend, and I've been coming back here on my own for a long time because it's kind of near my workplace, and actually it's right next to one of my centers where I'm at right now. But my schedule's quite busy. Anyway, here's the cup. Lately I've been hooked on espresso. I've always liked espresso. And they really do it well here. The Vietnamese coffee itself always has some kind of milk in it or something, and I don't really like that. You can't get away from that, but I still drink it, of course. But even when you order it black, it still has some kind of cream product in it to give it some froth or something. The espresso is better. It's just straight coffee, and it's strong, and that's what I need, especially when I'm working so much. You can see I'm talking quickly. The caffeine is having a good effect. But I just wanted to make a quick video before I get on the road, because it's about to start rush hour, and that can double my commute, and I still have quite a ways to drive to get back. But I didn't just want to head home. I've been so focused on work and interviewing and doing demo classes and stuff that I've kind of lost my hobby of YouTubing. But not lost. I mean, the channel is just a little bit dormant. The other thing is just considering brand and what I'm actually trying to say. I've got a couple book reviews in the works, including Dinesh D'Souza's book, which I want to review in the next week here. But I'm trying not to make this one of those just useless where have you been kind of videos. I do want to talk about some stuff, including Trump just gave a very riveting speech at the UN in which he mentions Otto Warmbier, and that's something that I've wanted to talk about for a while, is the situation in Korea and what's happening right now. And I remember when Warmbier was arrested, I was with my brother in Illinois, and we saw it on the news, and it was just a dramatic, riveting image of the poor young man being led away in that white sport coat and crying and reading a confession that was very obviously written for him by a non-native English speaker. But what I remember more about that was the leftist reaction, how the liberals treated the whole situation, and how he was even mocked by, what was his name? I forget the guy's name, one of the late night guys, but was mocking him for his white privilege, and saying a name like Otto Frederick Warmbier sounded like something a frat boy would come up with. Pure nonsense. But, any attempts to equate it to white privilege is complete bunk. And the fact is, he was murdered. He was murdered by the North Koreans. Because even if he had taken that poster, as he allegedly did, it was not worthy of a labor sentence which led him to death. I mean, we're sure that he must have been beaten, tortured, starved, whatever. And this has happened to other Americans in the past. And it's always turned out the same way. The ones that we have gotten back have said that their confessions, so-called confessions, were forced, and they didn't write them. But they thought they could get a better deal for getting out of it. Like, for Warmbier, for example, he said that he did it because he wanted to get a car or something, or like $10,000 cash, or something that really isn't that hard for someone like him to obtain. Pretty much any working class college student, whatever, can at least borrow some money to get a car, and $10,000 isn't really that much, not enough to risk your life. And then the other connection with his church, I'm not entirely sure about that. But North Korea does have a hard time with Christianity, even though, as you might be surprised, they do have churches, but they're a lot like the communist-run churches in China, where they're very restricted and very closely monitored as to what they say. And the minute they go into anything political, they're taken off. So thinking about North Korea and how Kim Jong-un dropped a bomb, a hydrogen bomb, a couple weeks ago, and the tests have continued, it's kind of a scary situation. And actually, for the first time, I'm beginning to think that maybe it is coming to war, actual war again. That is to say, the war is still in effect. It was only an armistice that was passed in '53 that ended our involvement in Korea. But they've been still armed and preparing and training for war. And by one recent stat that I read, I'll try to find it, but it was a few weeks ago, they have, in terms of numbers, a bigger army than anyone on the planet, including the U.S., counting all the militia, all the reserves, and of course all the enlisted military, like, in numbers. However, I would also imagine that they are smaller than the typical American soldier, and not as well fed than the typical American soldier. And of course they do not have as much technology, but thanks to Bill Clinton, they do have nuclear power now, and they're building it and they're developing it, and it still looks like shit, but the fact is they're reaching closer and closer to our targets every day, and that's pretty terrifying. And of course people will defend them, saying, well, they're not really aggressing on America. America's got them surrounded by nukes and all that. But their rhetoric has been pointing to that this whole time. We are going to incinerate America. We're going to destroy you. They're pointing the gun at us and telling us that they're going to kill us. And we've just shrugged each time. We've said, oh, well, don't make me write another sternly worded letter. Don't make me complain to the UN or something about what you're doing to us. It's complete bullshit. And honestly, I think that the Kims and Jong-un, they want to keep their regime in power, which is why I don't understand this escalation, because it seemed like every year they just would have a fireworks show, and that was to get their people on the side. It's like War is Peace in 1984. It was them testing weapons and demonstrating to their own people more than to the outside world that they were still at war, and they still have their eyes on destroying America and hurting American targets, which is just completely insane. But now we have a new South Korean prime minister, and South Korea has a long history of presidents. South Korea has a long history of dictatorships of its own. The thing is, they've always been brought to an end in a timely way. It hasn't just been one family trading off power like the Kims. So they've got a new president, and Trump has decided to go down on North Korea to really call them out. I mean, this is much more serious than George W. Bush calling the North Koreans part of the axis of evil and then just walking away and not really doing anything, and in fact giving them more aid and funding. But Trump is actually saying, look, we're not going to take this from you anymore, and who's to say what would happen? But honestly, I don't think that anything will happen. I don't think that anything substantial is going to happen. I think that Kim wants to stay in power as long as he can, because he's got an entire country all to himself, and he's living better than anyone else there. So they don't want to ruin that. They don't want to ruin that fun. But they want to keep up the show. It's just, it's eventually going to break. I just don't know if it's going to be in 5 years or in 10 years, but it's not going to be anytime soon. Inshallah. Personally, I've been to the North Korean borders twice. I've been to the DMZ as part of the Iron Triangle, which isn't the big official one you always see pictures of, but one of the areas with tunnels. And there I just looked out at the DMZ and into North Korea and all their fake buildings and stuff. I didn't get very close. And the second time was a few years later in China. And I was walking along the Yalu River, which is the river that separates North Korea from northern China. And it was a winter day, and it was a very beautiful trip. Like, up to that point, I'd been to the eastern part of the Great Wall, because the Great Wall ends there in Dandong, right by the Yalu River. But you look across the Yalu and you see North Korea, and you see propaganda posters and barbed wire and machine guns and drawings of machine guns. and I thought it was really funny, and I was nervous, but I didn't let it intimidate me. It was just like walking alongside a great canyon or something like that. But I felt totally free and totally at ease, in part because a Chinese woman gave me a Bible tract as I was walking there, and it was in Chinese, but I was quite surprised by it, that she would give me an evangelical Christian Bible tract. The other thing, I had about a liter of what we called almond joy back in the day, which was hashish milk that we brewed with almonds, and that sort of made it an otherworldly experience. And it made me think, well, in the face of this illegality, here we have the most oppressive regime, and I saw a few soldiers even go across a very highly guarded bridge, but then we have all the decadence and all the fun and all the liberty and all of the religion that we have in the West. And so it was an interesting contrast to see that in a city that, you know, Dandong, of course, also has a lot of communist imagery, this statue of Chairman Mao and all that. But it's certainly not North Korea, and they can't control it like North Korea. And communism in China sort of collapses under the weight of its own people. Because the people are doing well, and they're making money, and they're doing business with the U.S., and in pretty much any big city in China you can find McDonald's, and you can find Burger King, and all the same Apple products and all that stuff. And there's a class of people doing quite well in China, better than me, you know, but the vast majority, the middle class Chinese, just the working class, you learn about their wages and all that, and they are held back by their government quite a bit. And they all want the same job, the government job, where they sit in an office all day and they make thousands and thousands of dollars every month, but all they do is just play computer games and go on Facebook. And that, my friends, is the reality of communism. Expect more soon. I am going to be better about making videos. Thank you all for watching. Jinka Jabo.